say.
Can I have a little fun? You don't mind if I sit instead of stand?
No, you don't mind we eat?
No, I don't mind eating at all.
He didn't need to be rude.
Yeah, I've already
Instead,
eaten.
kiss my brother.
No, I can tell.
Can I tell you my latest joke, my latest Trump joke?
Yeah. Been there.
I was in New York, going to a committee to unleash prosperity dinner. And as I was walking to the dinner, there was this niche bookstore there. So I poked my head into that bookstore. There was this proprietor sitting behind a desk. So I just asked him, I said, hey, do you have President Trump's latest book on how to deport illegal aliens? The guy looked up at me and said, get out of here and don't come back. And I said, that's the one, do you have it in paperback? Isn't it fun being, we got to take things and make it humorous, you know, and there are lots of issues that, you know, people get a little too serious, a little too uptight about. What I want to talk about here just today is, look, in principle, how the economics of supply side economics works. As you know, economics is all about incentives and how it works. And there are two types of incentives in this world. And I want to go with this just in principle, because if you think of things go back down to the real basics, you can really start seeing economics clearly and precisely. If you start off at a very big, complicated level, you never can get out of the molasses and see the things. But if you get down to the basics, you really can. There are two types of incentives. There are positive incentives, and there are negative incentives. By way of illustration, if you feed a dog, you know where that dog will be at feeding time. All right? It'll be right where you feed it. The dog will be there ready for it. Positive incentives tell you what to do. All right? On the other hand, if you beat a dog, you know where the dog will not be where you gave it the beating. But you have no idea where it's going to be. It's going to take off and go away. You have no idea where it is. Negative incentives tell you what not to do. The stove does not care where your hand is as long as it's not on the hot stove. So when you look at economic policies, incentives really matter and how they're structured. Let me give you an example. Taxes are a negative incentive. They tell you what not to do. Do not report taxable income. What they don't tell you to do is how not to report taxable income. You can use evasion, avoidance, underground economy, move to a different business district where taxes are different, or go out of business. The taxes don't care. They say, just do not report taxable income. So when you look at a negative system, what you need to do is design a policy that has the most beneficial impact on that negative system. And let me start off with the single most important, the one I've spent a lot of my life on, right, on taxes. Taxes are a negative. All taxes are bad, but some are worse than others. So what you want to do is you need to collect the requisite revenues to run government. But the way you want to do it is you want to do it in the least damaging fashion possible. All right? So what you want to do is collect the requisite revenues you need to run government by doing the least damage through taxes to the overall economy. Please, are you with me on that? So when you think about this, and you think about the North Star, and I'm going to talk only North Star with you today. I'm not going to do all the little innuendos that these politicians do who know nothing about anything and talk about it all the time. All right. The North Star is, how do you collect your taxes? What you want to do is have the lowest possible tax rate on the broadest possible tax base. So you provide people with the least incentives to evade, avoid, or otherwise not report taxable income. And by having the broadest tax base, you provide them with the least loopholes and credits and so they can stick their income and avoid paying their fair share of taxes. So the North Star definition of a good tax code is to have the lowest possible tax rate on the broadest possible tax base. I'm just going through the basic because taxes are a negative incentive. So therefore, you want to make sure they do the least damage when you put them into place to collect the requisite revenues. You all follow me in this, please? And that's the North Star. You start every conversation and every thought of taxes with that North Star in mind, period. And your whole objective is to make sure you're always moving towards that North Star. For example, with Reagan, we got the highest marginal income tax rate down from 70% to 28%. Not too shabby. With Trump, we got the corporate rate from what was it, 35% down to 30, down to what is it, 20? 21. We got it down to 20. I mean, we're moving towards that North Star, all right, all the time. So you with me on the first one, what to do with that? One thing you know is you never put a positive incentive structure inside a negative incentive structure. You never do something positive inside the tax rate. If you want to help single mothers with children, do not give them a tax credit or a tax deduction, because that's a negative system and you're trying to incentivize them through a negative system. What you want to do on taxes is all you want to do is collect the requisite revenues to run government. If you want to help someone, write them a damn check. Do not use a tax credit, a tax deduction, a tax coupon. Don't do that. Collect with the requisite revenues, and if you want to help single mothers with children, God bless you. But write them a check. You know, if you do it through the tax codes, there may be a single mother who doesn't file a tax return. And then you won't be able to have that refundable tax credit there. And plus, if you do it through that, it's terribly inefficient. It never hits the right speed and just screws things up unbelievably. So always separate negative and incentive. Now, on government spending, let me go on government spending. There are an infinite number of things the government can spend on and can do. All right, all of you there, we elect you guys to make those choices as best you can for society, and what we hope you do collectively, and you, especially you, I'm watching you. Especially you guys, I know, but especially you guys, what you're supposed to do is collectively make a judgment on what is the most beneficial forms of spending for the society. Now, when you look at taxes and spending, all right, we got a low rate broad-based flat tax. We've got spending on the most beneficial uses of the funds. Now, how large should government be? When the damage done by the last dollar of taxes collected is a less than the benefit done by the last dollar spent, you stop already. That's where you stop. That's the right size of government. Anything larger than that is spending way too much. Anything smaller than that is not spending enough. Government has a function and has a role in society, but it is a limited role. It is not unlimited. So you want a low rate, broad-based, flat tax, and you want spending restraint. You all with me? Third pillar of prosperity, sound money. There is virtually nothing that can bring an economy to its knees faster than a decaying, destroyed, unbacked paper currency that is collapsing before our very eyes. We had last month an annual rate of inflation of 9.1%. That is a crappy monetary system. That is an unsound paper currency that is going to hell in a handbasket. If you get some of those inflation rates, and you can see it in the 1970s, I mean, I happened to live through it. I was in the White House back then with the president and watched the Carter years, and I thought Carter was the worst president ever until I saw Joe Biden. All right? But I mean, seriously, you can see that we're coming through the 1970s all over again. We have an unsound paper currency. We need to get there and get sound money. The way you get sound money, twofold. Number one, I'm going to give you the Democrats' version and my version of sound money, all right? The sound money is, let's imagine we have apples, all right? If I reduce the demand for apples, what happens to the price of apples? It goes down. But how do I reduce the demand for apples? I put people out of work, I get high unemployment, gross domestic product falls, we have a recession, a depression, a contraction, we get years and years of high unemployment, and you will bring inflation down. You will. But that's by reducing. But now what's another way? If I have a bumper crop in apples, what happens to the price of each apple? It also goes down. There are two ways of lowering the price of apples. One is to collapse demand, which will bring the price down. The other one is to expand supply. But when you expand supply of apples, when you increase the production of goods and services, and you get a bumper crop in goods and services, you will get lower inflation. But not only will you get lower inflation, you'll be at full employment, high productivity, good, and everyone will be happy. The two ways, one is what we used to call the deep root canal work theory of economics, which is what the Democrats, what Larry Summers is advocating, what all of Biden's economists are advocating, and what the Fed is advocating. It's what Paul Samuelson advocated. We are supply side. We want to bring down inflation by increasing the production of goods and services. The second thing you want to do is make money valuable. Now at 9.1% inflation, how many of you are willing to buy a 10-year government bond that yields 2.9%? No, it's stupid in the extreme. You're just losing your money. What you need to do is make money attractive. And when you're in an inflationary environment, you need to make money attractive. You want tight money and you want increased production of goods and services. How do you do tight money? You got to raise interest rates, not raise them by letting the government raise interest rates. You got to get the government to get out of price controls. The government should just sit there and say, we're not buying any more government bonds. In fact, we're going to offload some of the $8.9 trillion worth of government bonds they bought. We're going to offload on some of them and see what happens to interest rates. But interest rates will rise to the point where people all of a sudden now will be willing to buy those bonds. It may be 14, 15, 16%. That may be, but that's exactly what Paul Volcker did. When we took office on January 20th, 1981, when God still loved America, and the fields were green, and the animals multiplied, the trees flowered, blossomed, bore fruit,
There were
and the children
two
danced
genders.
in the street, and Ronnie was president of the United States. The prime interest rate in this wonderful country of yours, on January 20th, 1981, when we took office, was 21.5%. Paul Volcker knew enough not to be stupid to try to control prices. These guys with Powell and all these others who are accepted, who are appointed because of their gender, because of their race, because of everything except their competence, they don't know straight up from sick'em. And they just are ruining this place, and then Powell goes, I don't know what the hell to do. Paul Volcker knew what to do, and he did it right. Alan Greenspan knew what to do, he did it right. Arthur Burns knew what to do, and he did it right. McChesney Martin, these people are unqualified people to be head of the Fed. They don't know what they're doing, they're listening to them, what do you think we should do? What do you think? Oh my God, we need to do something. Whenever government politicians make decisions, when they are either panicked or drunk, the consequences are rarely attractive. And we are currently in a circumstance today where these guys have no idea. Oh my Lord, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. When politicians are panicked and running around making decisions, grab your wallet and run to the basement. And I mean that seriously. So when you look at this, the way you solve inflation is making sound money and expansive supply of goods and services. We did that in the 1980s. We raised interest rates to money sound. We did tax cuts, marginal tax cuts, and we expanded the living heck out of your country. From January 1st, 1983, when the tax cuts took effect, to June 30th, 1984. How long is that? Is that a year and a half? Is that 6 quarters? Is that 18 months? In that period of time, from January 1st, 1983 to June 30th, 1984, the U.S. real economy, expanded by 12%. The U.S. economy grew at an average annual compound rate of 8% per annum for a year and a half.
Wow.
We were growing like China grew. Because we knew what we were doing and it worked. You see these guys, what do they do? Powell says, I'm going to raise the discount rate by 1%. That's what, get out of the price control business. Let interest rates go to where they should be in a free market. All right. Third thing, low rate, broad-based flat tax. Okay, number one, with me? Spending restraint. Number 2. You with me on that? The size of government, it determines what the size of government should be. It shouldn't be any larger or any smaller. That's what it should be. Number 3, sound money. That's the 3rd pillar of prosperity. The 4th pillar of prosperity. Minimal regulations. We all know that you can't wake up in the morning one day and say, hey, I'm going to drive on the right-hand side of the road today. Tomorrow I'm going to change my mind and drive on the left-hand side. No. We all know you can't do that. We all know we need regulations in the society. But what you want to make damn sure happens is you don't want to go beyond the specific purpose at hand and create enormous amounts of collateral damage to the economy. You don't. You want to target and make damn sure that the regulations, the unintended consequences of regulations don't offset the benefits of the regulations at hand. You really want to make sure you are very respectful of controlling the amount of regulations you put on. I could go through all sorts of examples with you today, but you can see these guys in EPA. You can see with oil decontrol. You can see this guy, Jimmy Carter, about Joe Biden or whatever. Do you remember what Jimmy Carter did on oil? Let me just take you through it. First place, we had wellhead price controls. If you owned an oil well and you wanted to sell the oil, you couldn't sell it at market prices. They were capped. You had a tax on between your price that you were allowed to sell it at and the actual market price. There was a tax, so you had a control on the price there. Who's going to produce oil at that? No one. They had excess profits tax on the oil companies. Any of you remember that? They put on these big excess prices. That really incentivizes the oil companies to produce more. Now doesn't it? All right, there. What else did they do? They prohibited airplanes from taking in fresh air while they're flying and heating it up and recirculating the air in the planes. They required them to recirculate the air so they would not have to waste fuel by warming up the air, causing pandemics all over the places on the airplanes. I don't know if you remember that one. They had a rule that in every federal building during the summer, the lowest temperature you could set the building at was 75 degrees. And in winter, it was 66 degrees.
I remember that.
Well, your sweater, Mr. Jimmy Carter. Do you remember him wearing his sweater?
Yep.
That son of a gun from what was it, Georgia? You know, the idiot from Georgia. Oh my God. Do any of you remember he had price controls on what you could sell gasoline for? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Remember, he put price controls on gasoline. So instead of paying a little bit extra for gas, all right, what you did, you had to wait in line for 3 or 4 hours before you got gas. I mean, Herb Stein, who was very funny back then, said he could prove that the length of a line could never exceed the length it took to drive through with 1 full tank of gas. The lines could never be longer than that. I don't know if any of you remember this stuff and the fleet mileage requirements and all of that stuff. We are entering that. We need to have minimal regulations. And when you get regulations, keep your damn hands away. Last, and this is one that may bother you. I really hope it does not. But if it does, learn from this one. And I'm going to tell you this one is as important as anything is on earth. Low rate, broad-based flat tax. Spending restraint. Sound money. Minimal regulations. And lastly, free trade. Free trade. There are some things we produce better than foreigners. And there are some things foreigners produce better than we do. We and they would be foolish in the extreme if we didn't sell them those products we make better than they do, and they in turn sell us those products they make better than we do. It's called win-win. It's called the gains from trade. It's called David Ricardo. And I want to tell you, it's much more than just pitter-patter of an economic theoretician. When you're doing business with foreigners, do you like your customers? The people who pay you money for your products? Sure. Darn right you do. So do international people. When you do business with foreigners, you like them because they buy your products, and they like you because they buy your products. You know, we become friends. You become very close friends with your customers and your friends, and by being very close friends, you no longer want to bomb each other or go to war. If you have investments in China, a lot of investments, the last thing you want to have happen is the U.S. to go to war with China. If China has investments in the U.S., the last thing you want is that China wants us to go to war with Europe. I'm saying the most important thing for a peaceful world economy is free trade. Believe me when I tell you this. Right? The 5 pillars of prosperity: low rate, broad-based, flat tax, spending restraint, sound money, minimal regulations, and free trade. And then I'm going to tell you the story. I was very blessed in my youth. In fact, Allison was born around that era. I lived in Southern California. I was very close with the president, with the governor of California, a guy named Ronald Reagan. He was in our social set. My godfather was a man named Justin Dart, who happened to be Ronald Reagan's best friend. So that's, he was head of the kitchen cabinet. If any of you want to read Bob Colacello's book, Ronnie and Nancy, you can see our social set back then. No one knows our social set. They talk about all sorts of other stuff that is basically irrelevant. But our social set was the set that got him as governor. My godfather, just a story, after the Goldwater speech, Reagan's Goldwater speech, you've all heard about the Reagan Goldwater speech that was just most brilliant. Our group wanted to get Ronnie to run for governor. And my godfather had lunch with him, but they had lunch every month, the two of them, and he said, Ronnie, we've all talked together, your friends and I've all talked together, we want you to run for governor. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do it. The last thing on earth I want to do is run around and kiss babies and go out and beg people for money so I can run for governor of the state of California. I'm just not going to do it because I just don't want to do that crap. And then they talked a little bit longer and figured out how much would it cost to run for governor of California. And the number I think came out about $700,000 was the total thing for running for governor. This was back in the olden days. It'd be a little bit different today. But it was what it was for running for governor. And they left it. 2 weeks later they had lunch again. And this time Just Start walks in, sits down, and they start having lunch, and Just hands him an envelope. And Reagan said, "What's this, Just?" And he said, "Well, it's 7 checks for $100,000. Now you're running for governor." And then Ben Biaggi, Bill Wilson, Bill French Smith, Holmes Tuttle, Jack Rattle, all of our crowd. Each one of them wrote a check for $100,000, put it in that envelope, and Reagan ran for governor in 1966. He was elected and became governor. All right, this is the world there of that world. You know, what you need to do on this stuff is really make sure we get the politics there, the election there. The story I'm trying to tell you is some of the people in our social set were really fine. And to get along with 5 pillars of prosperity, I used to have lunch once every month and a half, every 2 months with a guy named Charlton Heston. I don't know if you remember Charlton Heston.
Sure do. Quite.
I just loved him. I mean, he liked me a lot. I did a radio show back then on the KBC, and his wife, and he loved it. And so I would have lunch, and he was great. And I really liked him as much because, remember that one movie? It was called Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
You remember that one? Where he gets out of the spaceship, and he lands back on Earth in a different time, in a different place. Right? He comes out with a little spacesuit on. You remember him hopping around in there, and he gets down to some field. It looks like right in the middle of Michigan, with all this corn down there, and there are all these humanoids in the field that are picking corn and looking around, and dressed in ragtags. Remember that? And the one real pretty girl. Remember that one in the ragtag there? And he hops in. He sees all these humanoids. He hops over to say hello to them, and all of a sudden, bang! There's this net that goes over all of them. And these apes come out of the forest. They're chimpanzees, they're bonobos, they're orangutans, they're gorillas that come over. And one of them comes over to him in this spacesuit and puts his hand on him and said, "Get your stinking paws off me, get your stinking monkey paws off of me, you dirty ape." Do you remember that line? Well, I have co-opted that line for the economics. Keep your stinking socialists off my hands, off my economy, you dirty commies.
Yeah.
5 pillars: low rate, broad-based, flat tax, spending restraint, sound money, minimal regulations, free trade. Then get your stinking monkey paws off my economy, you dirty ape. All right? That is the solution to our problem, it's a solution to the states as well. Now, yesterday, if you remember, I talked about the 11 states that have introduced the income tax since 1960. I'm not going to do that again because there are a couple of you that heard it yesterday, but I got a better one. Or not a better one, the same one for you. I mean, there are 1,000 different examples. I'm going to read this to you. When Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll tell you this story too. I was on the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors in California. Not a full-time job, it's a part-time job with Schwarzenegger. And with Milton Friedman, George Schultz, myself, there were about 8 or 9 of us on this. Mike Boskin, Dave Taylor, you know the people there. And when he turned to the dark side, I just said, "I'm the hell out of here. I'm not going to be with you, you dirty ape." And that's when I moved, and I moved to Tennessee. But I have to. You one fun just story. All right. I had known Arnold Schwarzenegger before for quite a while. Not well. I'd known to say hello to him, to sit and shake hands and do that, but no serious sit-down conversation with him. So I've known him. So he invited me when the recall of Bray Davis was happening. He invited me to come to his home to have breakfast with him, which I did. And everyone told me that Schwarzenegger had this wit about him. All right, really sharp, aggressive wit. I mean, this was not a man to toy with. This is a guy who really had a sharp tongue in there. So I tried to figure out my best strategy. So I figured my best strategy was an aggressive, offensive strategy to get in there. So I could put him on the defensive so he wouldn't beat me up. All right?
Okay.
So we were sitting out the back, and I came in and I said, Arnold, it's so nice to be here with you. I'm so glad you're running for governor, and I'm so glad you're doing this. And when I found out you had Wilson and Buffett as your advisors, I was over the moon with joy. I was just so excited. Wilson and Buffett. Until I found out it wasn't Owen and Jimmy. When I found out it was Pete and Warren. And he goes, And he did that. Then he says, "Why is it all you clear-thinking economists are so short?" Where does this come from?
Redirect.
Yeah, why Milton Friedman, he can't be more than 4 feet 6 inches tall, little bitty tiny man. And you also, you remind me of Donnie DeVito. I starred with him in Twins. You know the movie Twins?
Yeah.
So he handed me my lunch back. But the thing is that I moved from California, and I went to a place called Tennessee. Now, how did I pick on Tennessee? And I'm going to tell you. I looked at all the 49 states that are not California, which has been raised, and I wanted to go to the lowest tax state in the nation. If I don't do it, who the hell does? So I looked at it, and I found Tennessee is the single lowest tax state in the nation. Mm-hmm. It really is. Now, the Tax Foundation will tell you that's not true. But the reason they tell you it's not true is because they do not count severance taxes as taxes. So therefore, Alaska has the lowest amount of taxes if you remove severance taxes. Alaska has the highest amount of taxes if you include severance taxes. All right? So I looked at just total taxes of every state, and Tennessee has the lowest tax state in the nation. That's how I decided to take my whole family, and we all moved to Tennessee. But I wanted to just read you a little paper I wrote. Now, this was a little while ago, and I have not updated, but it's all still true. This is the story of Tennessee. Now, I entitled this paper, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. Who says you can't have low taxes, great service, and fiscal soundness? Not Tennessee. And I will tell you one joke with regard to this Tennessee one before I read you the results. I was in the convention center in Nashville just the other day, and I heard these two guys talking away. They were talking real loud. I'm nosy and snoopy, so I listened into their conversation. The one guy said to the other guy, he said, "Did you hear about the Tennessee family? All the cousins, all the relatives, all of them all got together. The whole big family, the whole collective family. They all packed up all their belongings, and they all moved to Illinois. Did you hear about that family?" And the second guy said, "Well, no, I didn't." And he said, "And you never will."
Right.
Tennessee. All right? Tennessee, let me go through this with you. And I want you to think about this in terms of Michigan. Michigan in 1966 was 5.2% of the U.S. economy. Today, Michigan is 2.7% of the U.S. economy. There has never been a collapse of a state in history. Michigan has done it under Republicans. George Romney did the income tax in Michigan. They put a tax on in Detroit City. They did all this stuff. And it's on through and through and through. The nice thing about you guys, you Mr. Governor, you Mr. State Senator, you Mr. State Representative, the nice thing about you guys is you know it's not just Republicans and Democrats. The Republicans are equally as bad as the Democrats. They really, really are. And you need to reform the whole damn thing because you've got a swarming nest of incompetence and incompetent people here in this state, and it has not gotten better at all. It is in a death spiral heading straight to hell as fast as you can go. Second slowest growing state in the nation, next to West Virginia. God bless you, you did beat West Virginia. Which West Virginia.
We worked hard at that, I guess.
To be worse than West Virginia is impossible. Well, you guys almost have succeeded. To give a couple more years of what you've done, and you'll match it. How long have the Republicans controlled the state legislature?
Right.
About 30 years.
About 30 years. You can see how wonderfully they've done. Who's been in charge of the Republican Party for 30 years?
Democrats, I think.
No, the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think the Democrats.
Well, people acting like Democrats.
Yeah.
Although there are a couple of people, what is that city called up there in Grand Rapids? Oh,
Yeah, Rapids.
You know, you gotta go for people. I mean, that's why when I look at this group, Trump support, it says it all to me. And then you get some of the people here in the state who say because Trump supported the person, therefore we're gonna oppose it. That's not the right way to be. That is not. You should support someone because they're the best person. Not because Trump said they were good, not because Trump said they were bad, because you think they're the best people. Well, I'm going to give you the story of Tennessee, all right? Tennessee has no earned income tax at all. It is one of 9 states that has no earned income tax. Tennessee has eliminated its gift and estate tax. It did it when I got there. I had a couple of run-ins with our governor, Republican. They were not pleasant. I won, he lost. We got rid of the gift and the estate tax. It was his chief of staff screamed and hollered and flipped me off in the middle of a meeting, but hell, you know, if I don't do that twice a day, I'm not doing my job. All right, Mark. And then we got rid of the unearned income tax, which we were one of 2 states that had no earned income tax. It had an unearned income tax. We in New Hampshire, we got rid of our unearned income tax. New Hampshire just recently got rid of its unearned income tax. All right, we just got rid of it in 2022. This is the first year without the hall tax. All right, Tennessee has the 9th lowest property tax in the nation. Now wait a second, let me see what that is. We have no income tax at all. All right, we have no gift and estate tax at all. We have the 9th lowest property taxes in the nation. I mean, Texas has very high ones, Florida has high ones. We don't even have property taxes. And I mean, how could that happen? I mean, just wait, and I'll show you how it happens. Tennessee has the 3rd lowest, but this is according to the Tax Foundation that I mentioned earlier, the 3rd lowest tax burden of all states. In truth, it has the lowest tax burden of all states in the nation, if you count severance taxes. Okay, what I did with you? You're all with me. No earned income tax, no unearned income tax, no gift, no state tax, and very low property. Now, we do have a sizable sales tax, but we're by no means the highest sales tax. Sales tax, a little under 10%. But you can choose where you buy your sales. All right? You ready? Outcomes matter, or taxes have consequences, or incentives matter. All right? Tennessee, now this is when I wrote this paper, which was 6 years ago, but it's the same thing today. Tennessee had a $2 billion surplus out of a $35 billion budget in 2016. We had the largest budget surplus as a share of our budget of any state in the nation. Now, let me go through. We have the lowest taxes rates of any state in the nation, and we have the largest budget surplus of any state in the nation. Huh? How's that possible? Well, you know, it's hard to collect revenues on people who leave the state. You know, it's hard to collect money from people who are unemployed or out of business. You know, the only way you can ever get something going is when you have economic growth and prosperity. All right, we have the largest surplus of any state in the nation. True today, too. All right, Tennessee's credit rating. What is your credit rating here, Mr. Michigan?
You don't want to.
Well, let me tell you this. Tennessee's credit rating, this is in 2016, which is also true today, 2022, was tied for #1 in the nation. AAA from all 3 of the major credit rating agencies. No, we don't. We have the lowest taxes in the nation, we have the biggest surplus in the nation, and we have the best credit rating of any state in the nation. What is going on here? I mean, Tennessee's state and local government employees' pensions
Fully funded?
are the 5th highest funded, yes, fully funded. They're 5th highest funded pensions in the nation. According to Pew, I use Pew here, had us at 98.8% fully funded. All right? Now, tell me this. The lowest taxes of any state in the nation, right? The biggest surplus of any state in the nation, highest credit rating of any state in the nation, and their pensions are all fully funded. How did they do that? How did they do that? Tennessee controls costs. All right, it does do that. We have, on the number of full-time equivalent employees per 10,000 population, we're 8th lowest in 2015. We don't just frivolously. We hire state employees to serve our citizenry, not to curry favors with the unions, so they can vote for us. We also, Tennessee has the 14th least, 8th lowest pay of any employees, and 14th lowest number of employees per 10,000 population. Get with me on that? Tennessee had the largest increase in employment to population in the nation from November 2015 to November 2016. That's when I wrote this paper. It's true today too, by the way. We had the fastest growth of any state in the nation. Fastest, #1. Not #5, not #3, not #50 like you guys are. We're #1. We have no taxes, no income tax, no gift taxes, no estate taxes, no property taxes. We do have a sales tax. That's true. We have the biggest surplus of any state in the nation. We are fully funded pension funds. We have the highest credit rating, and we're the fastest growing state in the nation. And we have very few public employees, and we don't pay them very much. All right? Our state is not about public employees. It's about people in the state of Tennessee, not about the unions and how you make them happy by screwing the citizens of your state. All right? From 2005 to 2016, Tennessee had witnessed the nation's 9th largest percentage increase in net in-migration as a share of population of any state in the nation. That's 330. They are coming to Tennessee. Now, what in the hell is in Tennessee? We don't have the topless beaches of Florida.
Moonshine.
We don't have that. We do have some moonshine, but so does Kentucky.
Yeah.
We don't have the surfing down in Laguna Niguel like they do in California. We don't have the Rocky Mountains like they have in Colorado. We don't have the presidential portraits like they have in South Dakota. We don't have New York City. We don't have nothing. We don't even have an ocean. You can't even name a river that goes through Tennessee.
Yes,
I mean, we don't have anything except low taxes. You know, earning income is a lot more fun with lower taxes, just for the record.
Yeah.
All right? Next one here. From 2006 to 2014, Tennessee had the 12th largest gain in net inflow of adjusted gross income of any state. Oh, who comes into Tennessee? Rich people! People who are bringing their jobs. All these companies are, you guys, you're complaining about foreigners not having enough, taking all your auto industry. We've got your auto industry in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Japan doesn't have it. Germany doesn't have it. Tennessee has it. And why do they have it? Because we are nicer to auto companies than you are. We're nicer to auto workers than you are. We build our whole highway system, which you guys didn't do. We like auto industries. We like all the people coming from Illinois down there. What was it? Caterpillar just moved down, all this stuff. Well, hell, Pritzker says if he loses the election, he's going to move to Tennessee. By the way, I got in a big fight with Pritzker. Well, I won't tell you that story.
Please.
No, I'll save it. Tennessee's highways.
I hate that, man.
Tennessee's highways are the 18th best in the nation. That's in 2015. The 18th best in the nation versus 37th best in the nation in 1987. We really focus on public services and making our state service these citizens of the state. Now, I've got the one for you. Are you sitting down? Or all of you got your arms locked in? Because when you hear this one, you ain't going to believe it. Everyone says when you go to a state with someone, why do you have all these taxes, Mr. Michigan? Well, we have these taxes because we want to have well-educated people. We don't want dummies running down dirt roads who can't read and write. All right, isn't that what they say? We want better schools. We want more police. We want better highways. Isn't that why they all say it?
Yeah, we're fixing the damn roads.
Oh, you're not fixing your damn roads. You're not fixing your schools. You're 40th ranked in the nation in schools.
Yeah.
All right, so what I did was I've looked at each and every single state in the nation on its education. If you look at state and local budgets, 50 to 55% of all spending in state and local is on education. Kindergarten, K through 12, and pre-K, and then all the way up, junior colleges, vocational schools, state universities, PhD programs, research for all that. 50 to 55% of all state and local spending is on education. All right? Now, the Department of Education of the United States has a testing score of every state. They go to every state every 4 or 5 years, and they take every single state. They do it primarily for 4th grade and 8th grade. All right? They look at reading competence of 4th graders. They look at math competence of 4th graders. They look at reading competence of 8th graders. And they look at math competence of 8th graders. Now, they do that every 3 or 4 or 5 years for the nation as a whole. So they have every state ranked that way. They do some separate ones as well every now and then, all right, on other topics. But this is their bread and butter on evaluating the states. You ready for this? This is Tennessee. You know, you get into Tennessee and Kentucky, now you northerners know this. You got to put a little licorice on your teeth so you don't look like you got some missing teeth coming in, you know. You just can't come to these dummies sitting there, you know. Right. As measured by the National Association of Education Progress. NAEP. Those are the NAEP scores. Tennessee's NAEP scores saw the fastest improvement of any state in the nation for 4th grade math. Number 1 in improvement in 4th grade math in the nation. Oh, by the way, did I mention that they were number 1 in improvement in 4th grade reading as well? Number 1 in improvement in 4th grade reading. Oh, maybe I forgot to tell you that they were number 1 in 8th grade math improvement in the nation. They were number 1 for 8th grade reading in the nation. We are the number 1 improving state in the nation in reading and math, period. How did they do that? How did they have all these wonderful public services with no taxes, with big surpluses, with fully funded pension funds, without all those employees at really high pay? How did they do that? Not only that, but noticeable growth was very strong for African Americans students in 2013, which was the last year I had for this study, all right? By the way, the differences between male and female have disappeared entirely in the state of Tennessee on educational performance. And in 2016, just one of the odd ones off, 2016 Tennessee's science scores also improved more than any other state in the nation. Oh, the dream in America is not to make Michigan look like West Virginia. The dream in America is to make Michigan look like Tennessee. You know, and why the hell the Republicans don't take advantage of this in this state is beyond me. They are just crazy, crazy, wild people who do not take advantage of what you got the money. The question is, who is it who is stopping you from getting the most qualified, understandable, able-bodied people into your legislature? You've controlled the legislature now for 30 damn years, and you've done nothing about it. You've had the governorship, you've had Engler, you've had what was the guy before, the guy who did the oil, did the lead in the water? Snyder. You've had all of this stuff, and you haven't done a damn thing with it. People deserve the governments they have, and you guys deserve rotten governments until you start putting good people in.
That's
and
right.
I'm just telling you, I have offered up to you my son-in-law for a chance of, but I have. John Lindsay is as qualified and as good as it. And by the way, Mr. Carr, you are too. You are too, by the way. Look what those rats did to you. Look how they tried to stop you from taking that job. You know, they did. And you look at this stuff. You've got to make a difference. For God's sakes, get off your ass and get out there and get something done, please. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at your great-grandchildren crawling on all four knuckles. I mean, you're going to be drooling idiots here in Michigan. Now, being from Ohio a long time ago, I find that a little bit pleasurable. Thinking of all the Michigans being drooling idiots, being in favor of Woody Hayes. If you remember in Schembechler, you remember all that stuff. But I'm not a football guy, but the stories were really
Yeah,
great.
right, those are big names.
Those are weird. Wait, you know Schembechler? You knew who he was? You know he was born and raised in Ohio. No, he didn't. Of course you didn't, because that's the only reason he was good. Woody Hayes' comment was, you know, we're getting into Michigan. I'm having fun with it now. But I'm not joking with you on the other stuff. I am not. Hopefully I'm telling it to you in an entertaining fashion. But it is not. It's the most serious. You are killing your grandchildren. And I mean literally killing them. With bad government, with bad schools, with bad politicians, with corrupt systems here. And the corruption. Can you imagine not allowing him to run for governor because the signatures were blah, 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 and he probably didn't even have it done. They have the correct thing. We just had Johnson here a second. The same thing happened to him. Lee Perry. You know, you need to reform your system, and you need to do it radically. You need to throw out a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats and get this damn place straight. You follow me? In a hurry. And in a hurry, otherwise you ain't going to have nothing left. And you know, we'll take every damn industry of yours there. And if for some chance something doesn't happen right, I'm going to beg them to come back to Tennessee with me.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not there already.
Well, I'm going home tonight.
Yeah.
But you guys got to do it. And I pray to God, and I really do pray to God that you guys can solve your problems. Because there's nothing better than a strong America. And a strong America needs a strong Michigan. It does. But if you're not going to do it, I'll go back to Tennessee and we'll just take all the crumbs you want to give us there. Thank you very much, guys. Oh, by the way, Mr. Kara, I would just like to say I've been following you and I've heard all of what you're doing here. I just want you to know that I endorse you fully and completely, and you can tell anyone that.
Thank you.
Very nice.
You're my type of guy.
Thank you.
You're my type of guy.
Thank you.
And by the way, sorry about that.
No, we're good.
You see this red wave hitting Michigan strong?
Well, not if they're going to have the corrupt red.
It's a big corrupt here.
Well, it is. And you've got to get the corruption out of here.
Yeah, it's not overnight.
Oh, yes, it is overnight.
You think?
Yeah, you don't kill a snake in 17 weeks.
I like that.
You know, there's an old one that John Conley taught me. He said, no matter how much you beat a snake, it still twitches at dusk. You know, these guys are going to have twitches there around, but every time they twitch, you whack them with a 2x4. Do not let them take over your state. Do not let them muscle all the money and all the don't let them muscle all the lawyers and all the accountants and all the deferred income specialists and muscle all the judges and all that stuff to stop you from being able to get the best government your state possibly can have. I mean, really don't let them.
I think we're herding up pretty well, but it's a big herd that has to go against.
Get them out of here. And you know, you got to do it now. And you know, it takes a lot of effort to get a good government. I mean, what Ronald Reagan said was, you know, freedom is at risk of extinction every generation.
One
You gotta
generation away.
One generation away from extinction. And the truth is, that is the truth. And if you don't do it, who will? As Reagan said, if not here, where? If not now, when? If not you, who?
No,
We
it's
joke with
it's
him on
getting
that.
people going. It's getting people going.
All right, anything I can do for any of you guys?
Thank you.
What the hell can I do other than give you my my son-in-law
I know.
and my daughter? By
And
the
we
way,
thank
my
you.
daughter is prima.
Amazing.
I mean, prima primorum.
I know.
She's the
Oh, we
best
know
of the
that.
best. There's no one better than she is. They make a terrific team.
Yeah, they do.
And they,
Here, here.
they got the two cutest little baby squirrels you've ever seen.
Oh,
in your
yes.
life. If you've seen my
And
little
don't
baby
forget the pony and the
squirrel. Oh, well,
donkey
that's,
and
I meant baby squirrels, William and Violet.
Right, no, I know,
Okay.
I know.
And they have promised if, no matter what happens, if I come up here, they're gonna have more babies. I watch it all now.
That's a big promise there.
That's the only thing your grandfather
Yeah,
cares about.
just
to be
throw
honest.
that on your list of things to
Alrighty, any questions on any of this stuff?
do. Oh, that was
You see,
great.
That was
I could
good.
give
That was
you.
really good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Man,
Thank you.
I,